Okay, anything new since last week?
Yeah, since last week, I actually tried the How We Feel app that we wrote about in our article as well. And in the app, it had an exercise where you basically, I suppose it's kind of like embodying your emotion through your body. And, you basically figure out what emotion you're feeling and then just act it out through your body and take a position of what that emotion feels like to you. And it was interesting. I tried it when I guess I was feeling a bit down, and it didn't immediately have an effect, but I felt like an hour later or so, I was kind of feeling a lot better. My mood was improved, and I think generally it was kind of cool to have a new tool in the toolbox for when I'm feeling down, and I'll probably take that forward, to when I next feel like that. So I think a good learning for me. How about yourself?
I think the topic was, as you said, acceptance and noticing.
Hmm.
One emotion I felt a lot in the last weeks was just like anger about my AIs when they would like not do what I thought they should do. And I felt like it's just like the most obvious thing and still they get it wrong. And, like frustration and yeah, I can't say that I have fixed it. And that also wasn't the point of the post last week. It was just to notice it and to accept it. I think I'm there. And yeah, next step is emotional regulation. And that's what we are here for. Yeah, welcome back everybody to Euzoia, your weekly dose of ideas for a good life. Yeah, today we're going to cover emotional regulation. So like step 2 in this mental health series, what you can do when you notice an emotion, but maybe feel overwhelmed by it and need something in the short term. And then post after this is going to be like more long-term cognitive framework kind of things. And yeah, I think the main motivation for this is that we often take thoughts and emotions as reality, right? But often it's just your bodily state that creates those, right? Like just imagine thinking about the same topic on a while you're in bed 3 a.m. in the morning, can't sleep, like the world looks absolutely terrible. But then in the morning after a coffee, the exact same situation like seems so much more manageable, right? And then when you're like exhausted 4 p.m. again, everything looks terrible, and kind of it goes in loops, right? And that's your state influencing your thinking. But of course, you can also influence your state, right? And this episode is just about like different things you can do on this. And I'm going to kick us off with the first part, and that's what to do in like very high intensity situations. So when you feel overwhelmed by emotion and like need some way to deal with them. And some of these come from different therapy frameworks, but we kind of just all mumbled them together. There's two themes basically. Like one is to stop and remove yourself from the situation. One can like literally be to stop, leave. It can be like to distract yourself with other stuff and just like ignore it for now. And like, I'll come back to this, but like right now it's just too much. And the other one is to kind of work with your body to change your bodily state. And through this kind of, again, influence your emotions and your thoughts and things you could do with your body. Splash cold water on your face, literally. Just intense exercise. It could be that you use your senses to maybe see things, feel things, hear things, and like actively focus on those to get yourself focusing on something else. And one thing that I think personally like works absolute wonders is breath work. It's like the breath is something you have with you all the time, and it has such a strong influence on your state. These can like super intense breath work exercises that take a while, that are pretty crazy, but maybe not the right thing in that moment. But like simple like box breathing, where you like breathe for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. And you can just repeat. Already has like magical effects on your state. I had a personally like I never really understood all those things until a few years ago. I was in the like emotionally like super overwhelmed state and was kind of panicking. Like I couldn't sleep. I was like just like not in a very good place. And I tried to find some therapists to help me with this, and they I think had like 3 of them or something. It's like shopping around basically, and they all recommended exactly the same thing. It's like, hey, like yes, there's something you should deal with, but you don't have to deal with this right now. Like what you need right now is to like get your bodily state back into order, and for that, just think of yourself like a child. Like how would you treat yourself if you were a child? It's like probably you need some calm. Probably you need like some tea, like lots of sleep, distraction, right? Just like go for walks in nature, watch friends, like see friends. And then like once you feel safer again, you can still deal with all that stuff that was happening, right? Like, but I found this like a very, very good framing, like thinking of yourself like a child in those kind of situations.
Yeah, definitely. The breathing one is so interesting. I feel like it's such a great fast stop thing when something's going wrong, because it's something you can always do, whatever the situation, even if you're in, a fight with your partner or something like this. Even as you were talking that through, I noticed myself taking a deep breath and even using it right now. So I think the breath is like a really excellent one that you can use anytime. And then, yeah, maybe moving on to the more like moderate interventions. The first one being naming. I think even just putting a word to what you're feeling can be a really effective intervention, even more so than these more complicated exercises that we'll be going through in future posts. I think it's really good in the moment when you have a negative emotion, just kind of like putting that gap between the emotion and your reaction and how you feel about it. Um, and I think it ties back into the previous post on awareness and acceptance, just practicing non-judgmental acceptance of the feeling. This can kind of itself lead to better emotional regulation.
I think what we also mentioned in the previous post was this idea that different emotions can mean different things, right? Like, for example, anger might mean that like a boundary was crossed, right? Or maybe anxiety means that you're like ignoring something, should maybe face something, right? Like all these emotions exist for a reason. I was just listening back to this podcast with somebody who is a therapist who had a patient coming to him who was doing these motorbike races. And he's like, I'm afraid, like I need something against the anxiety. And the therapist like was like, okay, like what's the risk of dying in those races? And he's like, oh yeah, like two friends of mine passed and it's in general 10%.
Oh
And
my,
the therapist was like, well, that's a perfectly valid emotional reaction. I'm not going to give you anything for this. Because like you should be afraid of this. Just saying like all of these things, of course, teach you something. And so after you named it, one thing is just to see like what is it trying to tell me? And can I just do this thing? Like maybe I should be careful about like going into motorcycle races where I'm likely to die. Maybe just not do that, right? Like or maybe a boundary has been crossed here. I'm not sure which of my boundaries the AIs are crossing that I'm getting angry all the time. But like that's something for me to figure out. But of course, this can also have a failure mode, right? Where you just always do what your emotions tell you to do, right? Like, and that might not always be serving your goals, right? So there's also a concept from therapy that is called opposite action, where basically when you feel like, okay, like this emotion might tell me something, but I'm kind of going too much into this direction. And usually you probably have an idea of, is this serving my goals or not? And then the idea is just to do the exact opposite. For example, if you feel sadness, instead of maybe isolating, just like get active and engaged, right? If you maybe feel anger, like try to be kind. If you feel joy, maybe it's too much joy and maybe just like feel some stillness and modulate, right? Like basically experiment which direction you want to go in. And I understand that it is a bit confusing that we recommend to both do exactly what it's telling you to do and then also do exactly the opposite. But I think it just depends on the situation you're in, and you're
yeah.
probably the best judge of what makes most sense here.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that makes the mind such a challenge is it's hard to know when, it's like a simple fix and you should just do what your emotions telling you versus, okay, is there something more complicated that, I need to think about more? Because I know for myself, if I'm hungry or tired, these are like things that put me in a terrible mood. So sometimes it's like, okay, just eat something and, have a nap or like improve my sleep setup. So I think as always, it's a balancing act, and you have to figure it out and kind of know yourself better as well. So, excuse me. Moving on to the final one. So this one's about preparing yourself. I think this kind of links to what I was just saying. If you know what could work for you or what would soothe you, and prepare this is something that can make a big difference. So you could have a soothing kit. Again, I think this could vary for different people, but preparing a box of like different things that make you feel good. For example, it could be pictures of happy memories, nice messages people send you, favorite music, maybe incense sticks. And then second to this, something like a coping card, a list of kind of like things you could do that would help you. For example, like box breathing and a description of how to do that, a list of people you could call when you feel down, previous things that have worked well and kind of taken you out of this mental state, and even some kind of like self affirmations or notes you have on your phone. And then Final one, planning for different situations. I think if you know you're going to be in a situation where you're going to feel probably emotionally dysregulated, maybe it's going to be a difficult conversation with someone or something like this, you could think this through, describe it objectively, identify what emotions might come up, what you expect to feel, how you're going to mitigate them, what tools to use. I personally sometimes have to have a timeout if I'm having a very intense conversation, maybe a bit avoidant of me, but I think sometimes it can be useful. And then visualizing the scene, watching it unfold in your mind and seeing how you'd react and planning out worst case scenarios, which is a bit of a stoic one you can do as well. So for me personally, I have my own list of kind of things I do if I'm feeling, you know, dysregulated or stressed. For me, I always start with breathing, as we mentioned before, box breathing or meditation for 5 to 10 minutes. Any sort of exercise, for me, it's usually going to the gym. And then I treat myself to sparkling water, which is my favorite drink, and then have
Love
a
it.
long sauna or a bath. And like, to be honest, most of the time this will make me feel better, and then I can move forward and kind of tackle the challenge or the trigger in a stronger mental space. But of course, I think for different people it's going to be different. I think many people often would like to talk to someone else and like talk it through. But that can be a really great way as well. And you probably have your own set of things you would like to do.
Cool. Yeah, I think those were the topics on emotional regulation for today. If you feel like you just want to try one or two things until the next week, then one thing you can do is prepare this kind of soothing kit. It's, by the way, like NHS recommended to do this. Then I think that's a super kind thing to do to your future self who might not be feeling so well. And you're basically now already taking care of them in the future. If you feel more like reflecting, you could ask yourself, like, what maybe have been emotionally challenging situations, or what will even better be coming up in the coming week? Like, how could you prepare for this? You could try breath work if you haven't yet. It's like you don't need an app. You just like start breathing. Try some exercises. I promise it'll be worth it. Yeah, one thing I did this week actually in experimenting with this is I played with music a lot more again. Like I had this like super intense day where like way too much stuff was happening, and of course I was angry with my AIs. And I was like, okay, like I'm writing. It was actually the day when I wrote the draft of on this emotional regulation article. I was like, let me try some of my own medicine, and I just put like lo-fi beats on, and like half an hour later, I was like in such a chill state, just like
Mm.
happily talking with my eyes. Everything was good. It was funny how, at least for me, how much effect music can have, right? Like you can also put yourself into like enthusiastic states,
Mhm.
melancholic states. It's like just playing with like how music can affect your state. I think it's super interesting. Yeah. And then, of course, share this post with a friend, subscribe to our Substack, and email us at christoph@euzoia.org if you want to share a story about mental frameworks, because that's going to be the topic for next week.
Thanks everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.